We've got to talk. At least that's what you've been told by a lot of English teachers and language learners, that the only way for you to improve your English is to speak as much as you can. And if you've seen some of my content, you've seen my own life experience and my work with my students, you know that I'm totally against this. It is important to speak, don't get me wrong. It's important to make your brain go through all those processes, but it's also important, so much more important actually, to rely on input. Hey language learners, my name is Csabi. Welcome to my channel for English learners who want to learn how to make vocabulary and language more memorable through listening and spoken communication. The first thing I hear from students is that they are tired of translating in their head. They want to get rid of it. They want to think in English and sound English. I don't think you have to get to that point when you have to think in English, because for some of you it might be difficult to make English your dominant language. If the majority of the time you spend communicating, you use your first language, it's going to be very hard for you to think in English. There are different ways you can do that. You could reach a level where it's going to be so automatic for you to use English that you could even think in English and easily switch between the two, but we've got to do a lot of input for that. Why nobody talks about this? Why only a few people talk about this? Because it's so hard to sell. When people talk about how hard it is to learn a language, that you actually have to make an effort, pay close attention, have laser focus whenever you study, and don't just do it in a half-assed way that a lot of struggling English learners do, it is harder to market. Obviously, it's so much easier to market. Something I've seen a lot in Japan, for example, these kind of conversation schools where they say, yeah, just come in, speak English for half an hour or an hour, and you will be done. You will be fluent in, I don't know, 3 to 6 months. It obviously doesn't work. And my experience in Japan was that it didn't help at all. Like students came to my school when I was working as a conversation teacher, but it wasn't really conversation, and they didn't reach more fluency. Not because I couldn't teach them how to do that. Of course, I have my 14 years of experience and my private students besides the school who have achieved their own successes with English. The reason they couldn't reach fluency was because they kept thinking that the only thing they have to do is grammar tasks and speaking.
Don't be ridiculous.
Input is important because it gives us a lot of examples of how the language works. And if you want to check out more, check out this video, which talks about how you have to pay more attention to what you're listening to, or sometimes what you're reading, in order for you to take in as much information as possible. So a lot, I think, comes down to how much of that input you do. I see some students who are told that the way they can improve their communication is that they can record themselves on video, which is a great speaking practice, but honestly, they forget that we use English, we use any language, not just to speak, not just to speak to a camera, like what I do now, but obviously I do want responses, and I'm so grateful to so many of you who have responded to me through email, on my newsletter, or in comments here as well, because that's exactly what language is for. It's used to communicate, to share messages, to convey the message. And that's exactly what listening and reading helps you with. It helps you get the message, how it's really used by its speakers, and it's also going to give you a lot of examples of how words and expressions are used in context. If you have a look at babies, the way babies learn is that they learn from context from a very early stage. They just keep listening to people speaking, adults talking to each other, not just to them directly, and they kind of make sense of everything based on context. So babies don't become more fluent because they start speaking, they naturally become more fluent because they keep hearing. So we need a massive amount of input for us to reach that fluency we always want. Of course, speaking is also important, but if you haven't been exposed to enough English, you will only struggle when you speak. You keep looking for the best words to express yourself when it's your fluency practice. And I think a lot of people who have done a lot of input, they haven't done much fluency practice. They've just worked on their speaking practice, which we know there are two different things. Here's a video that will help you with that too. It's so incredibly important to see the language or the expressions you want to use multiple times in all kinds of different contexts. Speaking doesn't provide you with that, but input, trying to make sure that you listen to the same topic in different resources, check different websites or books on the same topic, will also help you gain confidence talking about a specific topic, for example. What people tend to have a lot of trouble with is understanding that English is not a direct translated representation of their language. So as a Hungarian native speaker, for example, it would be really hard for me to assume that the things work the same way in my language as in English, because they are so different. The same thing happened when I was learning Japanese. In Japanese, people say you drink medicine, whereas in English, you would normally take medicine. So all these collocations, the way people express themselves in different languages, so the only way for you to sound more natural, to be able to be understood by other people, I don't mean speak like a native, but express yourself in English in a way that is part of the shared common code that everyone will understand, or most people who speak the language at the level. It's going to be important to see how speakers of English express themselves. Language learning needs to be meaning-based, and when you listen to something, especially when you read a book, while you're listening, your brain will automatically attach different meanings, associate meanings with all the experiences that you have. And this is exactly why members of my fluency and coaching program, the Proficiency Fortress, have made so much progress and are fast-tracking their fluency, because they are learning a lot from input. Their study time outside all the events and classes in the program is heavily based on input. It helps them tune their ears into what English sounds like, so eventually they can improve their pronunciation. And with the help of the program, they also learn how to notice different things in the input that they can always pay attention to, different prepositions or collocations as well. Plus, in class, in the events, they also learn how to learn from context, which is one of the, again, most efficient ways you can learn English. So make sure your language learning experience is also based a lot on input, trying to listen to real English, trying to make sense of what you're listening to, trying to make what you're listening to more and more and more comprehensible, even if you struggle with not understanding everything. It gives you an excellent example of how the language is used. Plus, make sure that you learn from conversations as well, because let's not forget that interpersonal listening is also another way to do input as well. And we do learn a lot by creating memories from all the experiences that we make with the people that we talk to. So you will be eventually so much more likely to remember expressions, phrases, sentences, even if you've had that experience using those specific words or expressions with a specific person. That gives that little extra help for you to remember words and recall them, retrieve them anytime you want to. Have you worked on building a strong reading and listening habit? How do you differentiate between the two? Is there any way we could focus on particular things when we read and some other things when we listen to English? Of course, I would highly recommend you use your reading experience, building strong reading habits, to acquire more vocabulary, because reading is the most efficient way for you to do that. But of course, we don't want to sound like an academic book or someone explaining to you how to put a piano together, which are things you could read in a book. So it's also important for us to listen to real conversations between people and pay attention to how they interact and how they communicate as well. This is, I think, why the combination of both, trying to build really strong vocabulary, which we also do in classes in my program with the help of our vocabulary workshops and our booster classes that really help students work on the language and practice how to speak, how to do the output, rather than always focusing on fluency. And then we also have listening workshops where people learn how people communicate with each other in conversations as well. So make sure the podcast you listen to or the videos you're watching are either series that are recorded, you kind of see the different patterns people use when they communicate, or check out podcasts that are actually real-time recorded, studio recorded sometimes, but they are not going to be scripted, so they will give you an excellent idea of how people communicate and interact with each other. This video will tell you my fluency story and how I became a confident, proficient speaker of English by the age of 20, literally never having set foot in an English-speaking country in the middle of an Eastern European country, Hungary. I highly recommend you check it out and see what sort of advice you could take and implement in your language learning journey as well. The best way how you can make use of learning from context, I talk about this in detail in this video, is if you take something out of something you listen to, something you read every single time. You can repeat a few times the phrases that you heard, the phrases you want to focus on, the phrases you want to slowly, gradually build into your language. Don't forget to find ways to review it then, to imprint all those speech patterns into your active language use as well. If you want to gain real fluency in English, which is speaking, using the language freely without always thinking of what grammar structures to use, what vocabulary to say, make sure you realize the importance of a massive amount of input. Make sure you keep it challenging, whatever you're listening to or reading. It has to be comprehensible, but at the same time, something challenging as well. Also, pay attention to the fact that what you understand doesn't necessarily equate to what you're able to express in English, and focus on the things you can't express yet. Whenever you listen, you want to learn something from it. This will eventually help you learn from context, which is what helped members of my community to improve their fluency, become confident and proficient speakers of English, because this is exactly how we not learn but acquire a language, and this will also have a massive impact on your speaking fluency. How do you use input as a way for you to become more fluent in English? What sort of resources could you recommend in the comments? If you have any ideas, make sure you share it here as well. How did you like the video? What do you think? Is it more speaking your way to fluency, or listening your way to fluency, or a mixture of these two? I'd like to see and hear your opinion. Feel free to share in your comments. If you like some of the ideas I shared in this video, make sure you leave a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't yet. I'd love to deliver more videos to help you become your most fluent and confident version of yourself in English. Thank you so much for watching this, and see you in another video in which I will be talking about what the 5th language skill is that no one's talking about, which using your will only be, I will have another video on that. Learn vocabulary more memorable. Often hear from students that they are style, that we should call it in a different way. And no. So make sure that one to is enough. Will have a massive impact of your. You have to realize the importance of